Hey y'all, welcome to TXC Tells All, or welcome back if you're one of our subscribers. So, if you are new to our channel, make sure you go and check out our playlist. But we have done extensive content on student loans and student loan forgiveness. So, if you don't know, my name's Tracy. Both me and Larita are attorneys, and we have a bunch of student loans. Well, Larita had a bunch of student loans, and she, thank God, had all her loans forgiven through the PSLF, the Public Interest Student Loan Forgiveness Program. So clap for her. If you haven't seen her videos, make sure you watch those, because if you are in public service, they could be really helpful. She got six-figure student loan debt forgiven through that program. Now, as for me, I still have not got my loans forgiven. I also went to law school and accumulated a bunch of student loan debt because of it. And so the progression of Biden's student loan forgiveness program that came about in light of the pandemic, and obviously people going through serious financial hardship because of that, is really important to me. And I know it's important to a lot of other former students or students out there who have student loans. So if you haven't, check out our playlist, Everything Student Loans, or Everything About Student Loans, where we get into what forgiveness might be available to you through Biden's student loan forgiveness program. Many people might be eligible for up to $20,000 in their student loan debt being forgiven. And about the student loan payment pauses that have been going on. If you have student loans, I'm sure you know that we've been basically paused throughout the pandemic and not had to make payments on our student loans. That supposedly is supposed to be coming to an end in July of this year, July 2023. And so Biden's student loan forgiveness program that could potentially cancel out student loan debt for people that have $20,000 or less and qualify is really important. So what am I talking about today? We are talking about yesterday's oral argument at the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court heard two cases that have been brought to challenge Biden's student loan forgiveness program. Oral argument lasted about 3.5 hours yesterday, where the justices were able to question many issues about the student loan forgiveness program, its constitutionality, whether the individuals or the entities that are bringing the lawsuit to challenge the program actually have standing, and is the program fair? Should Biden be able to do this? Is this a outside the scope of the executive branch's power? So is this outside the scope of the president's power? And one of the big things that has been talked about is the Biden administration able to do this without Congress? So can they sidestep Congress, and just because this program had come about as far in light of the state of emergency that we were in with the COVID-19 pandemic, does that mean, or is there law that says that that's okay? Biden is able to do this because it's actually in response to a state of emergency. So I know that's all a lot, right? And we're going to break that down. So I wanted to get on here and kind of give you guys an update. You know, if you have been following the student debt relief program in the news, I'm sure you saw all the news articles that came out yesterday and today after the Supreme Court heard oral arguments from the Solicitor Generals about these lawsuits that are challenging the program. So first, I mentioned standing, right? Let's talk about standing. Now, just legally, in order for a plaintiff, so in order for a person or entity to bring a lawsuit, they have to be able to show that they have standing. And essentially what that means is they have to show that they sustained an injury. So that person or that company or that state, that entity that's bringing this lawsuit has to be able to say, I have the right to bring this lawsuit because I, or the company or the state, has been injured by what I'm complaining about. So let me put that into the context of the student debt relief program. So there's 6 states, and those the majority Republican states, who have brought a challenge against the Biden administration student loan debt relief program. And I'm going to read those states to make sure I get it right. You have Arkansas, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Carolina. So those states have said that we are challenging that the Biden administration student debt relief program. They do not want this program to be able to go forward, right? For multiple different reasons. And one big question that the Supreme Court had yesterday is, do these states even have standing to bring this lawsuit? Were they injured, and can they prove that? So a lot of the justices' questions were related to standing, because if the court finds that they did not have standing to bring these lawsuits, then the Biden administration can win kind of by default, we try to say, on a technicality. They didn't have standing to bring the lawsuits in the first place, so we're not even going to look to the merits of the claim. So we're not even going to look into the facts and the law and all the things that encompass the lawsuit. We're just going to say on a procedural level, you guys didn't have standing, so Biden wins. So that was one of the major issues, and a lot of the 3.5 hours of oral argument went directly to that. So that was one of the big issues, and both the conservatives and the liberals had questions about standing. So it wasn't just this is a Republican issue. It wasn't just this is a liberal issue as far as the justices were concerned. I think both sides had legitimate questions about standing, right? So me, as a person having student loans, I would love to see this lawsuit or these lawsuits struck down on the technicality procedural requirement that the states that brought the lawsuit did not have standing. Now, the reason why they are saying that they do, specifically for Missouri, the student debt relief program goes to the federal loan. So if you have Fed loans servicing your student loans, or NELNET, you consolidated your loans through direct loans. Those are federal loans that would fall within the student debt relief program if you meet the other requirements. But what the states are saying is, particularly Missouri, is saying that they have a state related loan servicer, and it's called MOHELA, that program would lose revenue if if student loans were forgiven on the federal level. So what the justices were asking is, well, why didn't MOHELA, let's just call it MOLA, why did they not bring a lawsuit themselves? Because if they're the entity that's actually sustaining the injury, saying that if student loans are forgiven, there's going to be a loss of revenue in the future, then they are the ones with the standing, and they should have joined in on the lawsuit. They can't just Missouri can't just bring them in and say, well, the state of Missouri is affected through that entity or through that loan servicing program. So that was one of the questions they had, because MOLA wasn't part of the lawsuit. Is there really standing here? So we're going to see. I mean, the justices, now that oral argument is over, it usually takes a few months to have an opinion from the Supreme Court be handed down. The articles that I've read have said that we will see an opinion before July. So why is that important? Because the student loan pause is supposed to be ending around that time. And what the experts are saying is that the Supreme Court's decision is going to have a direct effect on whether or not the student loan pause continues or ends. So it is important for us little people that have student loans and are watching to see what's going to happen next. It's important for a couple different reasons. When are we going to have to start making student loan payments again? I know for me, it would be great if I could get $20,000 of my loans forgiven, but that's not going to take care of the six-figure loans that I have outstanding. So I'm still going to have to pay student loans. And understanding in relation to the Supreme Court decision when I'm going to have to start making payments is important. So if that's you, comment below. If you have additional information, I love for these to be interactive. And in a lot of our other posts about student loans, we've shared information. So if you have any information that I haven't mentioned, make sure you comment below, chime in on this discussion. Before we move on to some of the other issues in the Supreme Court oral argument yesterday, if you like this video, make sure you hit that like button and also hit subscribe. We post new videos every single week, and we have a bunch of information about student loan forgiveness on here that might apply to you. So let's keep going. So we got the standing issue, right? We talked about that. Next is the scope of power. That was a lot of the questions from the justices yesterday is, what is the scope of power of the executive branch? Does Biden have the power to actually forgive $400 million in student loans? just to give you an idea of how many people this would affect. If you haven't watched our other video, when they issued the application and they opened up the application for you to preliminarily apply for the student loan forgiveness, either the $10,000 or $20,000 if you had a Pell Grant. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure you watch our other videos where I explain that in more depth, and so does Larita. But they said 26 million people have already applied for this student loan forgiveness. So 26 million people are kind of just waiting in limbo to see what's going to happen, have their applications in. And those 26 million people want to see if if Biden's plan is going to be upheld or is it going to be struck down by the Supreme Court. So back to the oral argument, one of the issues is, does the executive branch have the power to do this without Congress? And that's what Biden's trying to do. This is not going through Congress. This is a debt relief plan that was issued by Biden's administration alone. The proponents for moving forward and saying, yes, he does have the power to do that, they're saying under the HEROES Act is the reason why. So the HEROES Act explicitly gave the Secretary of Education the power to waive any provision of the student loan program in a national emergency. And what they're arguing is that this Biden's student debt relief program is directly related to this provision right here. This is why he has the power to do that. It was a national emergency, and he's using the Secretary of Education is using their power to waive any provision of the student loan program. So they're wiping away pause 1 second. Yeah, I think I was having some technical difficulties, so I wanted to make sure that we were good there. Okay, so I think so that is like issue number 2. So issue number 1 is standing. Issue number 2 is, does the executive branch of the government actually have the power to do this without Congress? Now, the justices, they had different takes on things. Justice Sotomayor I feel like we have a friend in her, right? For all the people suffering, paying student loans, not knowing what's going to happen, it seems like Justice Sotomayor is on our side. And I'm going to read you a quote from what she said. She said, there's 50 million students who are or who will benefit from this, who today will struggle. Many of them don't have assets sufficient to bail them out after the pandemic. They don't have friends or families or others who can help them make these payments. Those debtors will suffer in ways others won't because of the pandemic. And then she said, and what you're saying is now we're going to give judges the right to decide how much aid to give the people suffering from student loans, instead of the person with the expertise and the experience, the Secretary of Education, who's been dealing with educational issues and the problems surrounding student loans. So basically, she was saying, in response to some of the arguments that said, well, why should the Secretary of Education be able to make that type of decision? Because it's not only going to just affect student loans, but it's going to affect the economy at large because of the large amount of money that's being forgiven. Justice Sotomayor said the Secretary of Education is the person with the expertise on both ends, the economic end and the educational issue end. So it seemed like she was advocating for that decision to be able to be made by the Secretary of Education. And then we had Justice Roberts, who had asked a bunch of questions about the fairness of the program. He brought in, and I know we've had a lot of comments from other people on other student loan videos that we've had on here that have said, well, what about the people who already paid off their loans? Or what about the people who worked really hard through school and never took out any student loans? Is this fair to them? Should the people who decided to take out student loans be able to just get them wiped away? So that Justice Roberts actually asked some questions about that, the fairness of the program for the people who were not able to take advantage of it. So a lot of issues floating around there. It will be really interesting to see what happens in a few months. It says, the Supreme Court usually takes about 3 months to issue written opinions. So the goal is, or the expectation is, that before July we're going to see a decision by the Supreme Court. But comment below and let me know what you think. Do you think the Supreme Court is going to find that the states, the red states, Republican states that brought these lawsuits have standing to do so? And do you think it's going to get even further than that? Do you think they're going to decide for the Biden administration student loan debt relief program or against it? Now, like I said, I would love to see them decide for it for me and the millions of other people that have student loans, but I don't know. It should be interesting to see. So I think this is far from over. If I had to guess, and I would say that I think there's going to be another student loan pause or extension of the student loan pause past July. I just don't think that all of the issues are going to be decided by then. But you never know. I mean, it's definitely at the forefront of the Supreme Court and the media. Of course, it's a lot of media attention. There was a bunch of protesters in front of the Supreme Court yesterday during oral arguments. So it'll be interesting to see which way this goes. I will continue to keep you guys updated. If I find out any new information, you check out our channel and you'll see videos on student loans. But like I said, if this is your first time joining in, make sure you check out our other videos on student loans, not only just for informational purposes as to what's going on, but also because you could be eligible for student loan forgiveness through programs that are already out there, like the one that Larita did where she got her student loans forgiven. So make sure you check that out. Thanks for tuning in with me, and I will see you guys next time.